We're here to discuss a serious subject today, and we have good news for our community. I'm Kim Ogg. I'm your Harris County District Attorney. I am joined today by crime victims' next of kin, her mother, Leticia Ibarra, and I'm joined by prosecutors from our Homicide Division, which was begun less than 2 years ago. Also, the Chief of our Trial Bureau, John Jordan, and our First Assistant, David Mitchum, Chief of Special Crimes Bureau, Ruben Perez. The purpose of today's press conference is to announce to people in Harris County that we made great strides in 2023 in terms of keeping them safer by sending more killers to prison for more years than we've done in a decade. So this chart shows very clearly that at the height of the pandemic in 2020, only 37 killers charged with murder or capital murder were sent to prison. The courts were mostly closed. Some of our prosecutors worked at home some of the time. It was a very difficult time for Houstonians, and an especially difficult time for crime victims' families, who knew that any resolution in their cases would be delayed, postponed, and could impact the final outcome of those cases. In 2023, what you can see is that our prosecutors and our courts went to work on murder. And with the addition of the Homicide Division, the assignment of John Jordan to the Trial Bureau, and the focus of our mission being pushed by leadership to every member of our staff, 271 killers were sent to prison for a total of 7,903 years. That means a lot of dangerous people are going to be off our streets for a long time, and that's good news. You know, if you do the math, it actually equates to a killer being sentenced to prison every day of every work week of last year. And there's a reason for that. Our prosecutors don't just work 8 to 5. They work weekends, they work nights, they spend time away from their families, all to accomplish the mission of public safety for the people of Harris County. And the result is, you did it. And we're a long way from being finished. There's so much work to do. We still and always will have many capital and murder cases pending until the murder rate really comes down and the courts stay open and the labs keep our evidence coming. That's how we will eventually knock this backlog down to something more reasonable than it's been. And this is a start, a really, really good start. I also want to thank our mayor, who during the last session carried a bill that this office asked him to author and carry, and it requires judges to prioritize the trials of murders, just like they do in child rape cases and some domestic violence cases. And why is that important? Because you can see that by the number that we've filed and the number that have been resolved, it could only be done by prioritizing murders internally. But judges control the schedule, and trials are set by judges. Continuances are granted by judges or denied. And so it takes the courts and the prosecutors working together. I want to tell you that this office has been victim-centric from the beginning. It's purposeful. It's part of my belief about our criminal justice system, that we've ignored not just the feelings, but the position of crime victims for decades, and the lasting impact on their families and the detriment to their survivors, their children, their friends is never ending. So the faster we resolve our serious cases, we'll improve public safety, but we'll also aid victims' families. And that is real progress. The law enforcement's efforts to solve murders faster, better, more completely is also reflected in some of our stats. And I can share with you that by the numbers that we're filing, over 400 capital murders and murders each year, that's double what it was back in 2017 and 18. You don't have those charts in front of you, but what it indicates is that police are solving more cases faster, many times because of citizens, phone cameras, body-worn cameras, security cameras, but also the advent of the iPhone and our ability through search warrants to get into what is often the most damning piece of evidence in homicide cases. So because of technology, law enforcement's work, the hard work of our prosecutors, and the efforts of the courts to try and resolve more murder cases, it's happening. You're safer, Harris County, because of these lawyers. And I'd like to ask Leticia Ibarra to share with us something that I hope nobody in this room ever has to find out, and that is how this homicide rate, how what we do affects real people. Leticia?
Thank you. Again, I'm Leticia Ibarra. And on this chart, in 2023, that last number, the 1, is me and my family, and it's my daughter. Of the 7,903 years, 40 of those belong to my case. My daughter, in August of 2020, was brutally murdered in her own home by someone she barely knew. It took 3 years to resolve the case. How that's impacted over those 3 years, every day that this person was in jail, he had was a potential where he could be let out on bond, was a potential that he could show up at my home, that he could attempt to harm me, my family, my parents, Jessica's siblings, all of that. Every day, every court date was a time of nightmares, of fears. I have to face this person. I have to look at the hands that took my daughter's life so brutally. And that's 3 years of court dates and stress and recycled trauma and PTSD, all of that. And so while the resolution of her case will never, and her murder would never be made whole by the resolution of the case, what this does and what it has done for 271 people in 2023 is allowed us to move on from that part of the stress and to just grieve as a family. So now we sit and we can grieve without worrying that justice hasn't been served in some way, shape, or form. I now know this guy sits in TDC getting the TDC experience he deserves, and he's not going to come after me and my family. And that is a huge, huge relief, one that I really can't express in words. So I'm so thankful for the DA's office, all of the prosecutors, homicide investigators, everyone involved, for bringing resolution to this case and some sense of peace to my family. So thank you.
We all know who the public hears when we give these press conferences and make announcements. And they hear from the people who are truly impacted, the victims' surviving family members. So I want to thank Leticia Ibarra for having the courage, after suffering the worst that any of us can imagine, the murder of our own child, to come out and to explain to people what delay and what resolution really mean to them. Before we leave, I just want to tell you about a couple of the high-profile cases that some of the lawyers standing here have tried. I'm so proud of them. Sarah Seeley, raise your hand. Miss Seeley heads up our homicide division. She works for John Jordan on a daily basis. She supervises about 18 other people who work on nothing but capital murders. And Miss Seeley tried and helped convict and bring a death sentence again on a 30-year-old reversed case where Daryl Wheatfall was found guilty and sentenced to death almost 30 years after the crime occurred. And I want to congratulate Sarah for that very intense, very difficult case and tell you how proud I am of you. Chandler Rainey recently tried a case against Nicholas Thomas. He murdered Miguel Vasquez on Easter Sunday in front of his family. He was murdered outside Dave and Buster's. And Chandler, where are you? I just want to thank you for a job well done. That was a hard case. That family has suffered enormously, and I'm grateful. Maroon Katani, youngest and up-and-coming member of our homicide squad. Maroon has done fantastic things since he's come to this office. And one of the things that he's done is he got a 75-year sentence for Sitan Annie for murdering Trevor Harrison in a retaliation killing. Finally, Megan Long. Megan just tried a case involving David Spates, who was convicted of capital murder for the extremely brutal murder and dismemberment of Kyla Larry, who leaves behind 2 children. So these are just examples of Houston tragedies solved by police, defendants, murderers captured by police, evidence collected, presented to Houstonians by prosecutors, for families, and the result is 271 in 2023. 271 families that can move forward, 271 murderers that are now separated from the rest of us by TDC walls. I want to thank everybody involved, and I want to thank the members of the press for reporting on this important good news for Houstonians. Questions?
This might be the stat nerd in me. Can you give us an idea of 271 out of how many trials were there?
I can give you those stats. I don't have the actual number of trials, but what I've got, if what you're looking for is how well did our prosecutors do, that I can tell you. There were 443 cases resolved in total. That represents related cases as well. There were 14 acquittals for an overall percentage of 96.8 in terms of our conviction rate.
And those are cases that went to trial, like 446 cases that went to trial?
Just resolved.
Oh, okay.
I don't have the total number of trials.
Does that include pleas as well as?
Yes.
And is that all cases, or is that just felonies? Or
No, that's capital murders and murders and related cases to those defendants.
I guess my follow-up to that is in cases where there are acquittals, or maybe you don't reach a murder conviction, but other
Lesser included.
lesser-
It's not.
What obstacle? I'm sorry,
Oh.
might exist that you aren't able to get that murder conviction in those cases generally? What obstacles still face your prosecutor?
So the greatest obstacle facing our homicide lawyers is the lab delay. The city lab is still 14 months behind on ballistics, 9 months behind on rape kits, and limiting DNA to somewhere between 5 and 20 cases each month. We've already had 38 homicides countywide as of Monday. It was almost as many homicides as have been days in the year, if not just a few more. And so the greatest obstacle in terms of resolving these cases is getting the evidence in a timely fashion so that we can turn it over to the defense and they can make a decision about whether they want a trial or plea. But without the evidence, really neither side can move forward. So that's the greatest obstacle.
Out of the 271, can you give us kind of a time range? Are these more recent murders, or are these murders that go way back that have been stuck in the backlog?
Yes.
Like since Harvey and.
Yes,
kind of thing?
there is an array. I know that some of those are 6-year-old cases. I know that some of them are just short of 3 years. So we see, I'd say, an average of almost 4 years in a case. I think our actual number is like 3.7 or 3.8 years on average to trial for murder or capital murder. We've got to do better than that. And the evidence chain is the key. We'll be working with Mayor Whitmire to, we hope, resolve some of these cases faster by shipping out the evidence and outsourcing it either to a local lab, like here at the county, who may have capacity, or an outside law enforcement lab, like Tarrant County, who has some capacity. But there's got to be a resolution soon, because every day we're taking in new murders. So every day that they're resolving them and sending them to prison, unfortunately, new murder cases are being filed. And we're glad about the filing, because it's better for everyone than having an unsolved case where people do not know who killed their child or have not even gotten the measure of justice of having their child's murderer charged and arrested.
We've reported that there's a general decrease in homicides, at least from 22 to 23, but you talked about more capital murder and murder cases are being filed. How do those two work together? If homicides are going down, that are reported?
The city homicide rate has gone down, and the county homicide rate has gone down from prior years. It's still, unfortunately, way too high. The resolution is that although there are fewer murders, more cases are being solved faster because of technology. And so instead of only filing, let's say, 250 cases, I'll give you the years. We filed I don't have totals, so it's a little harder to read. But example, we filed 225 capital murders 225 murders in 2016, 171 in 2017, and that's because of Harvey. But we filed 364 in 2022 and 301 in 2023. So they're solving them and filing them faster than before, and the courts are working harder at getting them tried. But I believe that the drive has come from this group of prosecutors dedicated to pushing these cases through. That was the directive I gave Sarah Seeley and John Jordan, and that's exactly what they've delivered.
What's your current backlog of murders and capital murders?
It's about 1,700.
How far back do you know how far back that goes?
You mean what's the oldest case?
Yeah, well, I mean, like how much of that is like within the last 2-3 years? How much of that is 5 years or more, 10 years or something?
That I can't tell you, Robert. When the backlog got that high, I started reporting it. It was 1861 when I went to the Texas Senate and testified about why murder cases should be tried first. But because we get them in almost as fast as we get them out, I think what's important is that we're keeping up. We're doing better than keeping up. We're getting more years, more separation, more public safety for people than ever before. That's what I'm so proud of them about.
Are you finding it easier to get seeking death in fewer cases than in years past, even prior to your administration? Are you finding that creating an easier time in getting a plea deal rather than going for the death penalty and having to go to a trial? I mean, is that part of some of this moving faster?
I would not say that. And the reason I wouldn't say it is that Harris County used to be known as the death penalty capital of America, and many cases were tried for death, but it was never dozens every year. It was a few each year. During my administration, we've sought the death penalty 4 times in 7 years, so we've used it much more sparingly, only for serial killers, murders of families, people who commit really heinous crimes. And I don't believe that seeking the death penalty less often. We have never used it as a bargaining chip in plea deals, so I don't believe that that's what's caused the improvement. I think it's these lawyers that have caused the improvement, and I want to give the courts credit. They're trying more cases. We're resolving more cases. We need to do even more.
You know, as you look ahead to this year, any high-profile murder or capital murder cases that you're planning on trying this year? Share with us.
You know, I don't get to try cases anymore. I used to do that. But, John, can you answer any of those? Sarah, do you have any thoughts? There are so many cases pending. What I'd rather do instead of guess is just give it a review and let you know. Is that satisfactory? Thanks. All right, what we look forward to doing is sending more killers to prison for longer this year than we did last year. And we did better last year than we've done in 7 years. So thank you, Letitia Ibarra, for your incredible sacrifice, and thank you, prosecutors.
One more question.
Okay.
Do you have any comment at this time about HPD chief saying that he did not give you permission to use videos of him with you for your campaign?
Yeah, I didn't video the chief. I've never asked the chief for his endorsement. We're friends of 30 years, and I know that appointed chiefs do not endorse. It's simply a public picture that was taken in a public place of me doing my job. So that's really the only comment I have.
Thank you.
Sure.
Can you talk at all, this is off topic to this, about how the DA's office came to a plea deal on the Mason Herring case that's gotten some attention the other day?
I can't.
Why not?
Because right now, I think it would offend probably the 271 families whose cases were resolved and who we are here to talk about. Perhaps another time.